the camera's on. What's up, Gooners? Saturday, March 14th. Out here in the shop. Oh, it's about 4 o'clock. It is a beautiful day out here. Beautiful day to be off racing somewhere. But no, we're here in the shop. I'm over here trying to catch up a little bit, working on a Cadillac 500-incher, doing for a customer. But I'm going to get done with that here shortly and get on to some of my personal stuff. Get back on the motor for the funny car. Got the TV playing, live feed, NHRA TV. That's Division 2 Baby Gators divisional race, which is odd because the divisional race is usually a week before the Gators. This week, it's a week after the Gators, so I don't know what they were thinking there. I wish NHRA would go back to the Winter Nationals being the first race of the season and the Gators being, the third or fourth race of the season, going into the spring instead of the first. But that's NHRA, so can't fight with City Hall. So this evening, I'm going to work on the short deck TFX. This is the one that's going to go in the car first. That's going to go in the Avenger car. If you've been following along, this is that complete used motor we bought that we tore down to rebuild and found a cracked main cap. Unfortunately, I was going to scab one of the main caps off one of our other TFX blocks. Again, if you're following along on our tall deck TFX, we were missing some caps, and we made some caps for it already, but those are the 3-inch mains, or the 3-inch main journal cranks. That's the only 3-inch main journal TFX I have. All the others are 2750, which is your standard Mopar 426 Hemi, 440 BRB Mopar, big block Mopar crank. So, we need a cap for this one. I only need one cap. I bought a piece of material, and these caps are made out of 70-75 aluminum, which are pretty darn expensive. These particular ones for the tall deck I made out of 60-61. For a customer, I would be making them out of 70-75. They're also hard-coated. If you notice, that's why they have that kind of greenish olive color to them. And the hard coat does improve the surface treatment as far as making the surface harder. I don't feel it's necessary because the bearing surface gets honed to finish. So once it's hard coated, you're taking off the coating anyway. So a little bit of surface finish of the hard coat definitely looks cool, and I'm sure it helps maybe bring up the Brunel a little bit in the aluminum. Makes it a little, I don't really want to say it's going to make it denser. Definitely maybe doesn't really heat treat it. But hard coat is basically for like a wear resistance situation. And then there's no wear on the outside of the cap. The only wear is inside on the bearing surface. I don't really see why we need to hard coat it. So I could send it up. There's a place in Raleigh called Surtronics. They're an electroplating company, and there's a minimum charge. So whether I send up like 50 caps or one cap, it would probably be $500. So I'm going to roll the dice since my motor. So I'm not going to hard coat the cap. We're just going to go ahead and make a cap and leave it raw like the cap's there. So when I get done with this Cadillac in a little bit, I'm going to try to do this main cap in segments. And we did get the shop cleaned up a little bit today. It's so much more pleasant to work in a freshly swept shop. I tell all these young guys that come work for me, you want to weigh to my heart, keep the floor clean. But nobody listens, so me and Lisa, my wife, end up having to clean up the shop anyway once a week. But anyway, I was going to fire up the Mazak and make the cap. Being it's only one cap, I think I'm just going to do it back here on the old trusty Bridgeport milling machine. And I ordered a piece of material from Online Metals, or Metals Online. What is it? Is it Metals Online? I don't know. It's either Metals Online or Online Metals. I buy a lot of little piecemeal material. But it's a piece of 8-inch long 1.25 wide by 3.25 tall, 70-75. This was the cracked cap we found. As you can see, someone did a crazy repair and welded it back together. 70-75 again is a heat treatable stainless, and it's heat treatable aluminum, and it's not readily a weldable aluminum. If I could zoom down there, which you probably can't see, well, you could see the cracks that are through the inside of the cap. So this would not be a cap I'd want to run. I'll throw it in the trailer, and it could be a spare. If we get to a final round or something to break a cap, I need something to put on there, maybe I would do that. But I'm not starting off the season with a welded main cap. So we're going to get this little piece of plate over to the saw, and I'm going to square it up. So stay tuned. I'm going to take you through that while on this Saturday night we make a main cap the old-fashioned way, manually. Oh yeah, somebody already made a remark about where's the torque plate. Unfortunately, I don't do a lot of Cadillac V8s. This is the family of the 472-500, the largest of the early 70s big Cadillacs. Here at RPM, my little backyard machine shop, I do have a wide array of torque plates for different motors, Mopar, Ford, Chevrolet, but I do not have one for a V8 Caddy, and this is just basically a resto motor with a mild cam and an updated ignition, so no need to everyone to get their D-pens in a wad. She'll be just fine. We'll put a half gallon of extra clearance in there to compensate for the deck plate pulling around. But no, unfortunately, I do not have a torque plate for a Cadillac V8. So, but if we get a run on them, I'll pick one up. But this is probably the third one I've done in my lifetime doing this shit for 30 some odd years. So I don't see a whole bunch of them coming through. But stay tuned. We're going to get back on that main cap here shortly. All right, so the first thing I want to do is lay this cap out. I'm going to take it over to the bandsaw and cut off the excess material. And I'll leave about, 50, 60 thousandths so I can clean up with the end mill on the milling machine. But the cap is right at 7 inches. So we'll go ahead and cut this piece, about 775, and we'll clean up the rest on the mill. So we'll go ahead and take it over there to the bandsaw. So like I said, I described the line on it, and just going to use the saw to remove the excess, and left about 40 thousandths per side. I'll clean that up with an end mill on the milling machine. So it's a little rinky-dink 7-inch bandsaw that I bought on Marketplace, I think for $200. I had a much larger bandsaw when I had my tool and die shop, but we don't cut up much material. Just need something to cut up pipe and stock, so forth, once in a while. Slow there. A little bit. And again, that's 70-75, and that's a hard aluminum compared to 60-61. If you ever turned on a lathe or milled any aluminum, 60-61 gummy, and you'll notice the chips come off the 60-61 like a real dull color. The 70-75 is a lot harder material. It actually turns and machines a lot nicer because of the hardness. And you'll notice when we start cutting some chips on the mill, the color of the chips are so much brighter in color than a piece of 60-61. So I'm going to let this cut for a second. It's going to take a minute, I guess. over to the milling machine. While that's cutting, I'll show you, I came up with a plan for the connecting rods on our top alcohol motor, and what we're going to do to save a few bucks. If you remember from the episode where we pulled down the Vini Hemi, it had real big bulky Brooks rods. We don't know how many runs are on them, but what we're going to do is I got a fixture I make to check the overall length, and I'll show you the fixture. It has a dial indicator on it, and what we do is I want to check the stretch on the rods. Now normally on a top alcohol motor or pro mod motor or something with aluminum rods that's real high RPM, the rods stretch. And if I find a variation of more than 2 thousandths, then I deem the rod not reusable. You know, anything under 2 thousandths, I say 1.5 thou. If it's under 1.5 thou of stretch, then I'll go ahead and reuse the rod until we get to a point where it's about 1.5 thou up the 2 thousandth stretch, and then we cycle them out. But being this was a fuel rod, what happens in a fuel motor, the rod actually doesn't stretch, the rod gets smaller from all the crazy compression force from the nitromethane. It actually squeezes the rod. So then, being these were a nitro motor, we're going to check them for squish, and we're going to see if they're within tolerance. And if they're 1.5 thou or 2 thousandths shorter than what they're supposed to be, then I'm not going to use them. But if they come up within spec, I say for this motor, within a thou to 1 thou and a few tenths, we're going to use them. So one of the problems we had with this rod was the pin bore. The fuel motor uses a real big pin, a 1-inch 156 pin. I couldn't find any pistons that had a 1/156 wrist pin bore or wrist pin. And with this short rod on the short deck, I couldn't even buy new pistons. So the new pistons are going to come in with a pin bore of 1-inch 096. So it's going to be about 60 thousandths smaller in diameter. And if you notice how high the ring is, the wrist pin is in the oil ring. Well, the pistons we're getting actually have a little taller compression height. So if we went with this big of a pin, I would be up into the second compression ring. So that's not going to work. So what I'm going to do, and the reason I'm doing this, is all to use a shelf piston. I want to use something off the shelf, something reasonable. I don't want to pay for a custom piston. So I ordered a piece of oilite bronze. This just came in. I got 13 inches of it, which was $100. And I am going to make some pin bushings I'm going to turn up, where I'm going to press in here after I turn them up. And what we'll do is we'll press them in the 1-inch 156, and we'll finish the pin bore at 1-inch 094. I'll get them roughed out. We'll do that on the Mazak. We'll do them on the CNC lathe, so we'll show you guys how we're going to do that. I'm not doing that tonight, but I got the bronze in for that little project, so I can go ahead and bush these rods. Even though they're already full floaters, I want to use these rods, and I want to use a shelf piston. I'm trying to do this as low buck as possible, so I don't see why a bronze bushing won't work in the aluminum rod. We use them in steel rods all the time, which isn't a problem. I got a steel rod around here. I can show you what I'm talking about. Well, here's one that's not bushed, but here we go. And you can see the small bushing, the bronze bushing, how thin it is in this Compstar steel big block rod. So mine will actually have a little bit of a little larger wall to it, a little bigger wall thickness than these. So hey, steel rods, guys put them in boosted motors, nitrous motors. The bronze bushing holds up. Do a nice press fit with the bushing and aluminum rod, and then we'll finish size them on the Sun and Hone out in the other shop. I don't see why that won't work. So we'll keep you up on that. And that's just, like I said, that's a way, because these rods are supposedly low runs. These rods supposedly only had about 15 runs on them, so that might start us in the season. So well, let's go back there to the saw. Hopefully that thing's cut by now, and we'll get over there on the milling machine. But I thought that was pretty wild when I got into engine building, how a blown alcohol motor or an NA motor or a nitrous motor as the aluminum rod cycles out, as it stretches, it gets longer. Where in a top fuel blown nitro motor or an injected nitro motor, the rod gets smaller. One gets longer from stretch, and the other one gets smaller, shorter from squish, from all the pressure pushing on it. So it's pretty cool. I thought it was anyway. So we got the material finally cut, and now I'm over here on the Bridgeport. Like I said, we're going to make this cap here manually this evening. No sense firing up the CNC just to make one special cap. I can knock this out in a couple hours here, just playing around here on a Saturday afternoon, late afternoon, watching the final round. Still the baby gators, still on the TV here in the shop. So the first thing I do, unfortunately, we only have one manual knee mill here in the shop, and it gets used a lot on different things. And not only myself, but my son or one of our helpers may use it. You know, we use it for clearance and blocks, and working on cylinder heads. And anytime I get ready to do something kind of critical or where I want precision, I always check the head to make sure the head is still trammed in. Because as robust as something like this looks, big milling machine that weighs about a ton, a little over 2,000 pounds, these heads will get knocked out of whack. And it's a universal machine, so the head can tilt back and forth, but they're locked down with locking screws all around for swiveling it in whatever direction you want, but they will get out of whack. And just checking it here, what I'm going to do, I'm just checking it on the table. I'm going to sweep my indicator. Set this up here. And what I want to do is spin it all around on the table and check and see where I'm at. So I'll just touch off here just so I barely hit the table. I'm a little slow doing this because I'm holding the camera. There we go. I usually just give it a couple thou. And I want it zero the whole way around. So I'm gonna sweep it, and lo and behold, it's off a country mile. Whoever was using it last didn't check it. Hopefully they weren't doing nothing too precision for me, because it seems like it's off about 25,000. So I'm gonna go ahead and loosen up the locking screws, and I'm gonna tram the head in. Then after I tram the head in, I'm gonna go ahead and take that same indicator that's on the quill, on the spindle there, and I'm gonna indicate the vise in. I want the vise parallel with the machine. So I'll indicate the vise in within a half thou. And like I said, I'm gonna tram this head in right now. So let me do that. But good practice, anytime you jump on a machine or a machine you haven't been using that isn't trammed in, or you didn't tram it in, whether you got one Bridgeport or 10 Bridgeports in the shop, always check it. Because they move around. I mean, I've seen you could drill a hole, a drill grab, and it'll kick the head and move it a couple thou or more. So that's good practice always to check the machine before you get started on something critical. So let me put this phone down, and I'm going to indicate the head in, indicate the vise in, and we'll start making chips. And we got the head all trammed in now. Look at that. That's money right there. Dead on, 0-0 the whole way around. So now I'm going to tighten my locks. You got to be careful when you tighten these locks. It'll twitch and move a little bit. So what I usually like to do, I like to take the first two and pull down, and take the ones here on the left side and pull up, back and forth. And I'll check it while I'm tightening it. And if it does move, I can still twitch it around. But that's what you're looking for, 0. And we're going to do the same thing on the vise now. All right, now we got the indicator on the vise jaw. Obviously, you always want to indicate the vise in from the fixed side, never the floating side. For those that don't know, for those that do know, don't listen to this. But again, this isn't a how-to run a milling machine video. This is just showing you how I do it and what I have to do to try to race on a budget here. So we're just going to slowly bring our Y-axis handle here into vise. And I'll just bring it to 0. And now I'll just use the power feed to swipe it back and forth to see if it's going to move. It's pretty close. I usually don't go off the vise. A lot of times on the corner of the jaws, they might have a little nick and give you a false reading. This one's pretty close. Well, no, it's off. It's off about 2 thou. So what I'll do is I'll just loosen one side now and just take a brass hammer here. And I'll just give it a little shot. I should have a hammer over here somewhere, but I don't, so I'm going to have to put this phone down and grab it. But that's what we want to do. We want to indicate the vise, and again, I want the vise nice and square with the spindle. I want it dead nuts on 0. So it's your lesson for tonight on how to tram in your Bridgeport. So we finish that up, and then we'll start cutting some metal. The first thing we're going to do is square up the ends, and we're going to bring our cap to our overall length. So I got a high speed 5/8 end mill in there. I'm just going to touch off and take off a few thou. Nice tight. Remove the handle because it's a habit. Always take the handle off when you're running a CNC. That's a quick way for a handle to go through a door on an automatic CNC machine. But yeah, it's a little bit of a pain. Like I said, because I only have one Bridgeport here in my little garage shop. It was always neat, you know, growing up in my old man's shop up north, and his tool and die shop. He always had a dozen Bridgeports, so there was always one to jump on that wasn't being used. But here we gotta jump on it and get done and do what we gotta do and go on to the next thing. I'm just gonna touch off there. See where I'm at. I'm gonna 0 my dial because the DRO doesn't work anymore. And I'm not a really big fan of DROs. I got used to, when I was young, using Bridgeports without a DRO, so I think it makes a better machinist out of you, not to have to rely on that. It's always cool doing bolt circles. People stand around watching you when you don't have a DRO. But I'm 0 my dial, and I'm just going to go in and take off 20 thou. Skim that up. And it cuts so nice. Like I said, the 7075 is a hard aluminum compared to a gummy 6061, which is considered a soft aluminum. And you can see the finish on there. Just I'm not even using any coolant or anything. Normally I would put some WD-40 or something on there so the chips don't stick. I may do that on my finished pass. Pretty nice finish for a Bridgeport, and I think the camera's making the end mill look funny. Look at that. It's not really slipping, it just looks like that in the camera. But so now we're going to flip it around, and I'll measure the overall, and we'll go ahead and bring the ends to length. Let's do that. All right, took a skim cut off that side. So now I got 2 square sides. I'm just going to check and see where we're at. And we are at 7-inch, 40 thou. And our finished cap finishes up, this particular cap is 6-inch 993, it seems to be. So I'm going to make it 995, and if I have to, we'll hand fit it, because remember, it's got to fit inside the block, and that's an aluminum block that's been used and cycled and moved around. Plus it has these side bolts, so I want to have the cap just where I can lightly tap it in with a rubber mallet. So I'm going to take off another 40 thou and double check it again, and then I'm going to bring it to size, and we can go on to we'll go ahead and fly cut the top and then bring that size. All right, so we're the length, what we want, end to end, and now we're gonna get our height. This piece of scrap material I bought, like I said, is a piece of flat bar, 4 inches wide. The main cap finishes up at 3 1/4. So we got 3/4 of an inch got to come off here. So instead of using the end mill, I'm going to put a little carbide 3 insert mill in here so I can go ahead and take the full width off in one shot. And we'll put a little WD or a little coolant on there. We'll take off about 100 at a time. So get that set up there and let's start blasting that down. Always cool to have some power feed. Give it a little juice. It would have been nice if the material was a little closer to size, but it is what it is. It's going to take us a minute. Said I'm taking a full width cut, so I can't go crazy because I don't have flood coolant here, but a few passes, we'll get her chopped down. Rapid Travis. Give her another shot. Go back the other way. Then I'll be sweeping the floor before Monday to get all the chips off. I just cleaned up too today. But we'll get this whacked down the size, and we'll go on to the next step. Okay, we got the block squared up. We've got our length, we've got our width. What we want is final size. Now, before I do anything else, I'm going to set up and do the radius for the housing bore, for the bearing. And normally, if I was doing this on the CNC and we were doing a little production, it would be pretty easy. I would make the part, obviously, a little thicker. So then I could clamp it in the vise, and I could just use one end mill and go around and profile the whole part. But being we're just doing one cap, we're doing it this afternoon on the Bridgeport, so we got to do it step by step, process by process. So the next thing I'm going to do, I got an edge finder. I'm going to go ahead and edge find end my part. I'm going to pick up center, and then I'm going to go ahead and put a boring head. I'm going to rough it out first with a spade drill. I'm going to put a boring head and go ahead and bore down to our bearing diameter. So let me go ahead and edge find this up, find my centers, and we'll put our boring head in, and we'll start cutting our bearing radius. All right, now I'm set up to bore in the housing. I roughed it out with a spade drill, large enough to get my boring head on there. So right now we're taking out 100 thousandths total, 50 per side. And this machine has a boring cycle. Meaning that it's feeding down on its own. It has 3 different settings. 5 inches a minute, 3 inches a minute, and 1.5 inches a minute. And I got it going slow as it'll go at 1.5 inches a minute. We're in no rush. We got time. And you can see how slow the handle is turning with the boring, with the quill engaged for boring. Had to get a little fancy. I had to take the chuck jaws out. Had just enough space in that 6-inch vise. Clear. So I think we're already out to about 2.5 inches. We got the finished pours 2-inch 950. So a few more cuts and we'll be there. There we go. Back it back up and reset the boring head. The boring head has a micrometer adjustment on there. Just put an Allen key in there. You see 1 division equals 1,000. So I'm cranking it in 100 divisions. So I'm going 100 thousandths at a time. Adjust it again and make another pass. So I'm doing these little videos off my phone, and I'm doing them with a program, or an app rather, called CapCut. So I can only do about 20 to 30 minutes total. The video's getting kind of long now. So I'm gonna go ahead and upload this video, and I'll just post it as part 1 for the manufacturing of the main cap for the TFX Vini headed hemi that we're fixing for the top alcohol funny car. So I'm gonna close this out now. We're still boring the bearing housing. Got a couple more passes to go, and then we'll set it up and put the bolt holes and profile mill it and so forth. But I'm going to finish this video up now, right where we're at, as part 1. It's about 6:30 on Saturday night, and thanks for hanging out and watching. And if you're interested, stay tuned, and I'll do the rest of the video finishing up the cap here in an hour or so. All right, guys. Thank you.